The early morning sunlight streamed through the large windows of Atlanta Memorial Hospital as Sarah Jenkins began her morning shift. At 32 years old, she had been working as a nurse for 8 years, but this particular Tuesday morning would change her life forever. Sarah walked down the busy hospital corridor, her comfortable white shoes making soft squeaking sounds against the polished floor. Her dark hair was neatly tied back, and despite being tired from the night shift, her warm brown eyes remained alert as she checked her patient's charts. "Room 405 needs attention," her colleague Mary whispered as they passed each other. "The new volunteer programming teacher is there, setting up some computers for the patients." Sarah nodded, tucking her tablet under her arm. She had heard about the new volunteer program that taught basic computer skills to long-term patients, but she hadn't met the instructor yet. As she approached room 405, she heard something unexpected: laughter. Real, genuine laughter, the kind rarely heard in hospital rooms. When she pushed open the door, she saw 5 patients gathered around a man in a wheelchair. He was gesturing animatedly, his hands flying through the air as he explained something about computer codes. His wheelchair was sleek and modern, but what caught Sarah's attention wasn't the chair, it was his smile. It lit up his entire face and somehow managed to make everyone in the room smile too. "And that's how you can make the computer say your name," he finished, his voice warm and confident. "Pretty cool, right?" The patients nodded enthusiastically, and Sarah noticed how engaged they were. Even Mr. Rodriguez, who usually stayed quiet and withdrawn, was leaning forward in his bed, asking questions. "Oh, good morning," the man in the wheelchair said, turning smoothly to face her. "I'm Marcus Thompson, the new programming volunteer." His handshake was firm and warm, his dark eyes twinkling with intelligence. "Sarah Jenkins," she replied, surprised by how at ease he made her feel. "I'm just here to check on Mr. Rodriguez's vitals." As she worked, she couldn't help but listen to Marcus continuing his lesson. He had a way of making complex computer concepts sound simple and fun. When Mr. Rodriguez struggled to understand something, Marcus wheeled closer to his bed and explained it again, using a different approach until the elderly man's face lit up with understanding. "You're really good at this," Sarah commented after the lesson, as the patients were getting ready for their lunch. Marcus shrugged modestly. "Teaching is easy when you love what you do." He adjusted his position in his wheelchair, and Sarah noticed how smoothly he moved, as if the chair was simply an extension of himself. "I had a motorcycle accident 2 years ago," he explained, catching her glance. "But it turned out to be more of a new beginning than an ending." Before Sarah could respond, one of the patients called out, "Mr. Thompson, will you tell us the joke about the computer coffee bug tomorrow?" Marcus laughed, and there it was again, that infectious sound that seemed to brighten the whole room. "Only if you practice your typing exercises," he called back. Sarah found herself smiling too. In all her years of nursing, she had seen many people facing disabilities with bitterness or resignation, but Marcus was different. There was a strength in him that had nothing to do with physical ability, it shone from within. "Same time tomorrow?" she found herself asking as Marcus prepared to leave. "Every Tuesday and Thursday," he replied, his eyes meeting hers. "The hospital cafeteria has surprisingly good coffee if you ever want to hear that computer coffee bug joke yourself." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Was he flirting with her? The thought both excited and surprised her. "I might just take you up on that," she heard herself say. As she watched him skillfully navigate his wheelchair through the hospital corridor, Sarah realized something had shifted in her world. She had walked into room 405 expecting to perform her regular duties, but instead, she had met someone who made her see beyond the surface, beyond the wheelchair, beyond the labels, to the extraordinary person within. Little did Sarah know that this chance encounter in room 405 would lead her down a path she never expected, toward a love story that would challenge everything she thought she knew about life, love, and the power of seeing with your heart instead of your eyes. 2 weeks after meeting Marcus, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, stirring her morning coffee while her mother's concerned voice came through the phone speaker. "Dating a man in a wheelchair?" "Sarah, honey, are you sure about this?" her mother, Linda, asked. "Life will be so difficult. You're a nurse. You know better than anyone how challenging it can be." Sarah sighed, watching the steam rise from her cup. She had expected this reaction. Ever since she'd mentioned having coffee with Marcus 3 times in the hospital cafeteria, her family and friends couldn't stop sharing their concerns. But they hadn't seen what she had seen. They hadn't watched Marcus teach complex computer programming with patience and humor. They hadn't heard his wonderful laugh or noticed how his eyes sparkled when he talked about technology. They hadn't experienced his kindness or witnessed how the hospital patients' faces lit up when he entered their rooms. "Mom, you need to meet him first," Sarah replied firmly. "He's different from anyone I've ever known." Later that afternoon, Sarah walked into the hospital cafeteria for what had become their regular coffee break. Marcus was already there, 2 cups of coffee on the table in front of him. He had somehow remembered exactly how she liked her coffee: 1 sugar, extra cream. "Your timing is perfect," Marcus said, smiling as she sat down. "I was just about to tell you about my latest project." Sarah took a sip of her coffee, noticing how he positioned his wheelchair slightly sideways at the table, making it easier for them to talk face to face. It was these small, thoughtful details about him that kept surprising her. "I'm listening," she said, genuinely interested. Every conversation with Marcus taught her something new. "Before my accident," he began, his fingers tapping lightly on his armrest, "I was a software engineer at a big tech company. Made good money, had a corner office, a whole deal." He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. "The accident changed everything, but not in the way most people think." Sarah leaned forward, watching his face as he spoke. There was no bitterness in his voice, only a quiet strength that drew her in. "While I was in rehabilitation, I realized how many people struggle with basic technology access because of their disabilities. That's when I started developing some ideas." He stopped, seeming hesitant to share more. "Let's just say I'm doing some consulting work now, trying to make a difference." The conversation was interrupted by Mary, Sarah's colleague, who approached their table with a surprised look. "Sarah, I've been trying to reach you about Friday's staff dinner." Sarah noticed how Mary's eyes darted uncomfortably between her and Marcus, clearly unsure how to react to their obvious coffee date. But Marcus, with his natural charm, quickly put everyone at ease. "You must be Mary," he said warmly. "Sarah mentioned you're the best pediatric nurse in the hospital. I heard you singing to the kids in the children's ward yesterday. You have an amazing voice." Mary's face softened, and soon she was chatting comfortably with both of them. When she left, she gave Sarah a genuine smile and a thumbs up when Marcus wasn't looking. "You see what you did there?" Sarah asked, grinning at Marcus. "What did I do?" he replied innocently, but his eyes twinkled with understanding. "You broke down another barrier. You're good at that." Marcus's face grew serious. "Sarah, I need to be honest with you. Dating me won't be simple. There will be challenges. People will stare, ask inappropriate questions, make assumptions." Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were warm and strong against hers. "I'm a nurse, Marcus. I deal with challenges every day. What I can't deal with is pretending not to feel what I feel." He squeezed her hand gently. "And what do you feel?" "I feel like I've met someone special, someone who sees the world differently, who makes me see it differently too. The wheelchair? It's just your way of getting around. It's not who you are." Marcus was quiet for a moment, his eyes studying her face. Then his signature bright smile returned. "Well, in that case, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? A real dinner, outside the hospital?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "I'd love to," she replied, realizing that she had stopped seeing the wheelchair weeks ago. All she saw now was Marcus, brilliant, funny, kind Marcus, who was quickly becoming one of the most important people in her life. 3 months into their relationship, Sarah and Marcus sat in his spacious apartment on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The place was impressively designed, with wide doorways and modern furniture that complemented his sleek wheelchair. But what caught Sarah's attention were the 3 large computer screens on his desk, filled with complex-looking code and designs she didn't understand. "So this is where the magic happens?" Sarah asked, gesturing toward his work setup. She had been curious about his mysterious consulting work for weeks now. Marcus smiled mysteriously. "Something like that, but enough about work. I promised you a home-cooked meal, remember?" Sarah watched in amazement as Marcus moved effortlessly around his adapted kitchen. The counters were at the perfect height for his wheelchair, and he had cleverly organized tools within easy reach. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air as he expertly prepared pasta. Where did you learn to cook like this? Sarah asked, sitting on a kitchen stool. After the accident, Marcus explained, stirring the sauce, I refused to let anyone help me with daily tasks. It was hard at first, dropped a lot of plates, burned a lot of meals. But now? He grinned, adding a pinch of herbs to the sauce. I might be better at this than before the accident. As they ate dinner, Sarah noticed how Marcus kept getting messages on his phone. Each time it buzzed, he would quickly check it and type something brief. She couldn't help but notice the serious expression that crossed his face several times. Important messages? She asked casually. Just some work stuff, he replied, quickly putting the phone away. Sorry about that. Tell me more about your day at the hospital. But Sarah had already seen something interesting on one of the notifications, something about a major investor meeting. She didn't press the issue, though. Marcus would tell her when he was ready. After dinner, they moved to his comfortable living room. Marcus transferred smoothly from his wheelchair to the couch, and Sarah curled up beside him. The setting sun cast a warm glow through the large windows, creating a peaceful atmosphere. You know, Marcus said softly, I never thought I'd find someone like you after the accident. Most people couldn't see past the wheelchair. Sarah turned to look at him. Most people are idiots, she said firmly, making him laugh. You know what I see when I look at you. What's that? I see a brilliant man who makes me laugh, who teaches computer programming to patients with endless patience, who cooks better than any restaurant, who has some mysterious job you won't tell me about. She poked him playfully at the last part. Marcus caught her hand and held it. The job. It's complicated. But I promise you'll understand everything soon. There's something big I'm working on. Something that could help a lot of people. Sarah noticed the passion in his voice when he spoke about his work. Whatever this secret project was, it clearly meant a lot to him. She squeezed his hand supportively. Whatever it is, I know it'll be amazing, she said, because you're amazing. Marcus pulled her closer, and Sarah rested her head on his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle outside. The moment felt perfect, and Sarah realized something important. She was falling in love with Marcus Thompson. As if reading her thoughts, Marcus spoke softly. Sarah, these past 3 months have been the best of my life. You've never once made me feel limited or different. You see me for who I am. And who you are is pretty spectacular, Sarah replied, smiling. Later that evening, as Sarah drove home, she thought about how her life had changed since meeting Marcus. Her mother had finally stopped making concerned phone calls. Her friends at the hospital had grown to adore him. Even her skeptical older brother had admitted that Marcus was pretty cool after meeting him. But more than that, Sarah had discovered what true love felt like. It wasn't about physical abilities or limitations. It was about finding someone who made your heart skip a beat every time they smiled. Someone who challenged you to be better, think differently, and see the world in new ways. As she pulled into her driveway, her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Thank you for making every day brighter. Sweet dreams. Sarah smiled, knowing that whatever secret project Marcus was working on, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because love, real love, breaks down all barriers. On a beautiful Saturday morning in Piedmont Park, Sarah walked beside Marcus, enjoying the spring breeze. They had been dating for 8 months now, and these weekend park visits had become their favorite tradition. Marcus's wheelchair handled the paved paths easily, and they had found a perfect spot near the lake where they liked to have their picnics. You're unusually quiet today, Sarah noticed, glancing at Marcus. He had been checking his phone more often than usual, and she could tell he was nervous about something. Just excited about our picnic, he replied, but his voice had a slight tremor that Sarah had never heard before. She raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. When they reached their usual spot under a large oak tree, Sarah started to unpack their picnic basket. The view of the lake was beautiful, with ducks swimming peacefully and children playing in the distance. But as she laid out their sandwiches, she noticed Marcus wasn't helping like he usually did. Instead, he was pressing buttons on what looked like a small remote control. Marcus? What are you? Before she could finish her question, something extraordinary happened. A small robotic arm emerged from a compartment in Marcus's wheelchair. It was sleek and modern, nothing like the medical equipment Sarah was used to seeing at the hospital. Remember all those secret work calls and meetings? Marcus said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. This is part of what I've been working on. but today it has a special purpose. Sarah watched in amazement as the robotic arm moved smoothly, reaching into another hidden compartment in his wheelchair. Her heart started beating faster as she realized what was happening. The arm produced a small velvet box. "Sarah," Marcus began, his voice full of emotion, "when I had my accident 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I fell into depression, thinking no one would ever see past my wheelchair." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Then you walked into room 405, and everything changed." The robotic arm moved with incredible precision, opening the velvet box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring. But what happened next left Sarah speechless. Using the robotic arm for balance and support, Marcus did something she had never seen him do. He slowly moved himself into a kneeling position beside his wheelchair. "I've been working on this technology for months," he explained, his voice shaking slightly with the effort. "Not just for this moment, but for everyone who's been told they can't do something because of their disabilities. But right now, it's helping me do something I dreamed of doing the right way." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she watched the man she loved kneel before her, supported by the amazing technology he had created. People nearby had stopped to watch, many of them filming with their phones, but Sarah barely noticed them. "Sarah Jenkins," Marcus continued, the robotic arm holding the ring steady, "you never saw my disability as a limitation. You saw me for who I am. You loved me for my heart, my mind, and my terrible computer jokes." This made Sarah laugh through her tears. "You supported my dreams even when I couldn't tell you what they were. Now, I'm asking you to share those dreams with me forever." Marcus's eyes locked with hers. "Will you marry me?" Sarah fell to her knees beside him, not caring that her jeans were getting grass-stained. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, yes, yes." The robotic arm gently slid the ring onto her finger as people around them burst into applause. Some were wiping away tears, moved by the scene they had just witnessed. As Marcus transferred back into his wheelchair, Sarah couldn't stop looking at her ring and the amazing robotic arm that had placed it there. "So this is what you've been working on?" she asked, still amazed. "Part of it," Marcus replied with a mysterious smile. "There's so much more I need to tell you. But first..." He pulled her close for a kiss, and Sarah melted into his embrace as the spring sun shone down on them. Later, as they shared their picnic lunch, Sarah couldn't stop smiling, not just because she was engaged to the man she loved, but because she knew that Marcus Thompson was going to change the world. And now, she would be right beside him as he did it. "I love you," she said simply, squeezing his hand. "I love you too," he replied, his eyes shining with joy and the promise of all the amazing things to come. The garden of the Atlanta Botanical Gardens was transformed into a fairy tale setting on this perfect autumn morning. White chairs lined the flower-bordered aisle, and soft music filled the air. Sarah stood in her private dressing room, her hands trembling slightly as her mother helped adjust her wedding dress. "You look absolutely beautiful, honey," Linda said, her earlier doubts about the marriage completely gone after getting to know Marcus over the past year. She carefully fixed Sarah's veil, tears shining in her eyes. The dress was stunning, an elegant white gown that Sarah had chosen specifically to complement their unique ceremony. It was shorter in front, making it easier to kneel to Marcus's level during special moments, but with a flowing train in back. Pearl buttons cascaded down the back, each one carefully sewn by her grandmother. "Something's different about Marcus today," Mary, Sarah's bridesmaid and colleague from the hospital, mentioned as she helped with the final touches. "He seems excited about more than just the wedding. Did you see all those important-looking people arriving?" Sarah nodded. She had noticed several well-dressed executives and what looked like journalists discreetly taking seats among their wedding guests. Marcus had told her he had a special announcement planned after the ceremony, but wouldn't reveal more. "Whatever it is," Sarah said, smiling at her reflection, "I know it's going to be amazing." Outside, Marcus waited at the altar in his specially designed tuxedo. His wheelchair had been customized for the occasion, gleaming with a new paint job that matched their wedding colors. But what caught everyone's attention was the new robotic attachment, more advanced than the one he'd used for the proposal, with smooth, almost human-like movements. The music changed, and the garden fell silent. Sarah appeared at the end of the aisle, holding her father's arm. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She was more beautiful than he had ever imagined. As Sarah walked down the aisle, She saw their journey flash before her eyes: their first meeting in room 405, coffee breaks in the hospital cafeteria, dinner dates, lazy Sundays, and that magical proposal in the park. Each step brought her closer to her future. The ceremony was deeply personal. Instead of traditional vows, they had written their own. Marcus went first, his voice strong and clear. "Sarah, when you first walked into that hospital room, you saw past my wheelchair to the man inside. You never once made me feel limited or different. You supported my dreams, even when I couldn't tell you what they were. Today, I promise not only my love but a lifetime of surprises, starting with one very special announcement after this ceremony." Sarah's vows came straight from her heart. "Marcus, you taught me that love has no boundaries. Your strength, your brilliance, and your kindness inspire me every day. I promise to always see you for who you are, the most amazing man I've ever known, and I can't wait to discover all the surprises life has in store for us." When it was time for the ring exchange, Marcus used his new robotic arm with perfect precision, sliding the band onto Sarah's finger as gracefully as any groom. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. Marcus pulled Sarah close for their first kiss as a married couple, and the garden erupted in applause. As they turned to face their guests, Sarah noticed Marcus's expression change to one of excitement and nervous anticipation. He squeezed her hand. "Ready for that surprise I mentioned?" he whispered. Sarah looked at him curiously. The mysterious executives in the crowd were now sitting up straighter, and she noticed several cameras being readied. "Whatever it is," she whispered back, "we're in it together." Marcus nodded, his eyes twinkling with that special light she had come to know meant something extraordinary was about to happen. As they prepared to make their way back down the aisle, Sarah could feel the anticipation building in the air. Their wedding coordinator appeared, discreetly informing them that a special room had been prepared for Marcus's announcement. Sarah saw television crews setting up their equipment, and her curiosity piqued. "Mrs. Thompson," Marcus said, testing out her new name with a grin, "are you ready to find out what I've really been working on all this time?" Sarah's heart raced with excitement. "Lead the way, Mr. Thompson." Little did she know, the biggest surprise of her life was just moments away. The private reception room at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens was packed with wedding guests, journalists, and business executives. Sarah noticed several cameras being set up, and her heart beat faster as Marcus led her to the front of the room. The mysterious atmosphere that had surrounded her new husband's work for the past year was finally about to be revealed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice confident and clear. "First, I want to thank you all for sharing this special day with Sarah and me." He reached for Sarah's hand, squeezing it gently. "But there's another reason we've gathered you here today." The room fell silent. Sarah watched as Marcus pressed a button on his wheelchair's control panel, and suddenly, a large screen behind them came to life. The logo Thompson Mobility Technologies appeared, along with images of advanced robotic assistive devices. "For the past 2 years," Marcus continued, "I've been more than just a programming teacher at the hospital. I've been the founder and CEO of Thompson Mobility Technologies, a company dedicated to revolutionizing life for people with disabilities." Sarah's mouth fell open. The mysterious phone calls, the late-night work sessions, the confidential meetings, everything suddenly made sense. Marcus gestured to his wheelchair and the robotic arm he had used during the ceremony. "This prototype, which helped me place the ring on my beautiful wife's finger today, is just the beginning. Our company has developed a complete line of affordable, advanced mobility solutions." The screen showed videos of people with various disabilities using similar devices: robotic arms helping them cook, special wheelchair attachments allowing them to play with their children, and mobility aids that could climb stairs. Today, Marcus announced, "I'm proud to share that Thompson Mobility Technologies has secured $50 million in funding to make these devices available to everyone who needs them, regardless of their financial situation." The room erupted in applause. Photographers' cameras flashed, and reporters quickly began taking notes. Sarah stood there, amazed, as she watched her husband transform from the man she loved into a pioneering tech innovator before her eyes. "But that's not all," Marcus said, turning to Sarah with tears in his eyes. "Sarah, my love, remember all those times you asked about my work, and I couldn't tell you everything? It was killing me to keep this secret, but I wanted it to be perfect." He pressed another button, and the screen showed the hospital where they first met. We're opening our first Thompson Mobility Center at Atlanta Memorial Hospital, where our story began. It will provide free mobility solutions and training to patients who need them most. Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. The patients they had worked with, the people they had helped, they would all have access to life-changing technology. And, Marcus added with a grin, I want you to run it. Me, Sarah gasped. Who better than you? A nurse who sees people for who they are, not their disabilities. Someone who has the medical knowledge and the heart to make this work. The crowd cheered as Sarah hugged Marcus tightly, overcome with emotion. Reporters began shouting questions, and business executives stepped forward to shake Marcus's hand, but he only had eyes for his wife. Are you mad I kept this from you? He whispered. Sarah wiped away happy tears. Mad? Marcus, you're going to change thousands of lives. How could I be mad? Linda, Sarah's mother, pushed through the crowd to hug them both. Now I understand why you had us all sign those confidentiality agreements for the wedding, she laughed through tears. As the celebration continued around them, Sarah looked at her husband with new eyes. She had fallen in love with Marcus Thompson, the charming programmer in a wheelchair. Now she was married to Marcus Thompson, the innovative tech CEO who was revolutionizing life for disabled people everywhere. I have one question, she said, smiling at him. Was the coffee in the hospital cafeteria really that good, or did you just keep coming back to see me? Marcus laughed, pulling her close. Best coffee I've ever had, he said with a wink. It led me to you, didn't it? Around them, reporters were still calling out questions. Photographers were taking pictures, and executives were waiting to talk business. But for a moment, they were just Sarah and Marcus, two people who had found love in the most unexpected place and were now ready to change the world together. The biggest surprise of Sarah's life wasn't just that she had married a secret millionaire tech CEO. It was that she had found someone who would use his success to help others, making the world a better place for everyone. 6 months after their wedding, Sarah stood in the lobby of the newly opened Thompson Mobility Center at Atlanta Memorial Hospital. The space was bright and welcoming, with motivational quotes on the walls and the latest mobility technology on display. But what made her heart truly warm was watching the young girl, no more than 7, using one of Marcus's robotic arms to draw a picture for the first time since her accident. Look, Mrs. Thompson, the little girl, Amy, called out excitedly. I can color inside the lines now. Sarah walked over to admire the drawing, remembering how just 2 weeks ago, Amy had been devastated about not being able to draw anymore. Now, thanks to the child-sized robotic arm Marcus's team had designed, she was creating colorful masterpieces again. That's beautiful, Amy, Sarah said, her heart full of joy. Should we hang it on our special wall? The special wall was Sarah's idea, a place where patients could display their achievements using their new mobility devices. It had quickly become covered with artwork, photographs, and thank-you notes from families whose lives had been changed. Just then, Marcus wheeled into the center, returning from a meeting with his development team. He had made it a priority to hire people with disabilities, believing they were the best qualified to design solutions for others facing similar challenges. His lead engineer was a former Paralympic athlete, and his head of user testing was a retired veteran who had lost both arms in service. How's everything going today? Marcus asked, stopping beside Sarah. He looked around the busy center with pride. Various patients were trying out different devices, from advanced wheelchairs that could climb stairs to delicate robotic fingers that could help someone play the piano again. See for yourself, Sarah replied, pointing to Amy, who was now teaching another child how to use the robotic arm. They're helping each other now. It's exactly what we hoped for. Marcus nodded, his eyes shining. Did you see the latest numbers? We've helped over 500 patients in just 6 months. And that's just at this center. Sarah knew the numbers well. As director of the center, she made sure to track every success story, every breakthrough, every smile when someone realized they could do something they thought they'd lost forever. Dr. Rodriguez called from Mayo Clinic. Marcus continued. They want to open a Thompson Center there. That would be our 3rd location. Sarah wasn't surprised. News of their success had spread quickly through the medical community. What made their center special wasn't just the advanced technology. It was their approach to patient care. Every device was customized to the individual's needs, and they provided extensive training and emotional support. "Remember Mr. Chen?" Sarah asked, leading Marcus to her office. "He came back today to show me something." She pulled up a video on her computer. It showed their elderly patient, who had lost mobility in his hands due to arthritis, using one of their devices to practice traditional Chinese calligraphy again. The joy on his face as he created beautiful characters was unforgettable. "This is why we do this," Marcus said softly, watching the video. "Every person has something they love, something that makes them who they are. Disability shouldn't take that away." Just then, Sarah's assistant knocked on the door. "Mrs. Thompson, the support group meeting is about to start." The support group was another of Sarah's initiatives. Every week, patients and their families gathered to share their experiences, challenges, and victories. It had become a vital part of their healing process. As they headed to the meeting room, they passed the hospital's computer training classroom, the same room 405 where they had first met. It was now equipped with various adaptive devices, allowing patients with different disabilities to learn computer skills. "Sometimes I can't believe how far we've come," Sarah said, posing to look at the room. "From teaching basic computer skills to changing lives across the country." Marcus took her hand. "It's just the beginning. Wait until you see what we're working on next." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Another secret project?" "No more secrets," Marcus laughed. "But we are developing something amazing for children born without limbs. The preliminary tests are incredibly promising." As they entered the support group meeting, Sarah looked around the room filled with patients, families, and hope. This was more than just a mobility center. It was a place where people rediscovered their potential, where limitations became opportunities, and where everyone was seen for who they truly were. And it had all started with two people who saw past the surface to recognize the extraordinary in each other. 1 year after their wedding, Sarah and Marcus stood on the stage of a large conference hall in Atlanta. The room was packed with medical professionals, tech innovators, and most importantly, families whose lives had been changed by Thompson Mobility Technologies. They were celebrating the company's first anniversary and the opening of their 10th mobility center across the country. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his robotic arm smoothly adjusting the microphone. "A year ago, I stood before a smaller crowd and revealed a dream. Today, I'm proud to say that dream has become bigger than we ever imagined." Sarah watched her husband with pride as he operated the latest version of their mobility technology. The new devices were smaller, more efficient, and, most importantly, more affordable than ever before. Behind them, a large screen showed images of their success stories. Children playing sports with specialized equipment, elderly people gardening again, artists returning to their craft. "But numbers and technology aren't the whole story," Marcus continued. "Sarah, would you like to share our latest news?" Sarah stepped forward, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly, their own little miracle, due in 6 months. The audience burst into applause as they noticed. "Yes, we're expecting," Sarah said, smiling. "And this has made our mission even more personal. Today, we're announcing the Thompson Foundation for Children's Mobility. Every child with mobility challenges will receive our technology free of charge." The announcement was met with a standing ovation. In the front row, little Amy, their first pediatric patient, cheered the loudest, her robotic arm raised high in celebration. After the ceremony, Sarah and Marcus moved through the crowd, greeting families and hearing their stories. A teenage boy showed them how he was now playing basketball with his adapted wheelchair. An elderly woman demonstrated how she could knit again using her robotic fingers. "Dr. Thompson," a reporter called out to Marcus, "your company's value has reached $200 million. How does it feel to be one of the most successful tech startups in healthcare?" Marcus smiled, looking at Sarah. "The real value isn't in our stock price. It's in moments like this." He gestured to where Amy was teaching a newly arrived child how to use her robotic arm to draw. "It's in every person who rediscovers what they thought they'd lost." Later that evening, they returned to the original Thompson Mobility Center at Atlanta Memorial Hospital. The hallways were quiet now, but the walls told stories of countless victories, photographs of first steps with new devices, artwork created by restored hands, thank you letters from grateful families. They stopped at room 405, now transformed into a state-of-the-art training facility. The room where they first met had become a symbol of new beginnings for so many others. "Remember that first day?" Sarah asked, leaning against the doorframe. "When I heard your laugh and came to investigate?" Marcus took her hand. "Best hospital coffee break ever," he joked, making Sarah laugh. "Marcus, Sarah," Mary's voice called from down the hall. Their old friend and now head nurse of the mobility center hurried toward them. "You need to see this." They followed her to the rehabilitation room, where a young man was standing for the first time since his accident, supported by their latest mobility device. His family watched with tears of joy as he took his first steps. "This is why we do what we do," Marcus whispered, squeezing Sarah's hand. That night, as they sat in their home office reviewing plans for the next 5 mobility centers, Sarah looked at the framed photo on their wall, their wedding day, the moment Marcus revealed his company to the world. "You know what I love most about our story?" Sarah said, rubbing her growing belly gently. "It's that it keeps giving other people their own amazing stories." Marcus wheeled over to her, placing his hand over hers. "And now we're starting a new chapter of our own. Our baby is going to have the most amazing parents," Sarah said softly. "A father who changes the world with his inventions, and a mother who helps people believe in themselves again. And a whole army of aunts and uncles," Marcus added, thinking of their dedicated team and the countless families they'd met. "Our child will grow up knowing that anything is possible." As they looked out their window at the city lights, Sarah realized their story was more than just about love conquering prejudice or technology changing lives. It was about seeing the extraordinary in every person, about turning limitations into possibilities, and about the amazing things that happen when you open your heart to unexpected love. Their journey had started with a chance meeting in room 405, but it had grown into a movement that was changing thousands of lives. And now, with their own little miracle on the way, Sarah and Marcus knew that their greatest adventures were still to come.